I ask someone to think about a dangerous neighborhood in Toronto, they'd usually think of a place like Jane and Finch. You've heard about it before. It's just been a notorious high-crime neighborhood for decades now. The Driftwood Crips are part of that reason. They originate from Driftwood Avenue, a bendy, windy street that runs north and south of Finch, parallel with Jane Street. It's a big area, with a ton of different buildings and complexes, and some community housing. This is basically the stomping grounds and the turf for the Driftwood Crips gang. They've been around for decades, causing havoc in their area. Now, let's take a look back at the origins and the founding of this gang. The Driftwood Crips were originally created with heavy influence from Jamaican subculture, which roots from the immigration of people coming into Canada from the West Indies and the Caribbean in the early 1980s onwards to the late 1990s. At the time, over half of all immigrants in Canada were from this region. For those who chose to come to Toronto, most settled down in communities within the inner city like Regent Park, but they began to spread out as new housing options geared to low-income families became available. By the late 1980s, the Jane and Finch area itself and Driftwood Avenue would now be home to thousands of immigrants. It's somewhere around this time that the youth from the area collaborated and founded the Driftwood Crips gang. When they initially created the gang, all of the Driftwood cliques were on the same side. North and South, also called Uptop and Down Bottom Driftwood, both claimed Driftwood Crips, with members totaling well in the hundreds. The gang quickly established themselves by selling drugs in the area and gaining rivalries with other gangs, introducing a new level of violence to the neighborhood. But as time went on, things would soon change within the Driftwood Crips hierarchy. In the early 1990s, the down-bottom Driftwood Crips had a problem with another Crip set in the city, the Rexdale Crips. Rexdale is an area a short distance west of Driftwood, which is also home to a few different Crips gangs. Now, the down-bottom Driftwood Crips began feuding with the Rexdale Crips after they would constantly clash at events, clubs, and parks in the area. Soon they had enough of the rival gang and figured, if they're enemies and they're Crips, then we might as well be Bloods. So, the members from the down-bottom Driftwood Crips started to identify themselves as Bloods. Naturally, this created tension within the Driftwood Crips from Uptop, and so a civil war ensued, transforming all of Driftwood into a war zone. The aftermath, with the gang not only splitting up into Uptop Crips and down-bottom Bloods, but each side also divided into little subsets. This division of the gang is still present to this day. You can see it by the amount of reported shootings in Driftwood in a usual year. The shootings are a combination of other gangs, as well as the civil feud between themselves. Now, we can fast forward a little bit over a decade. The Driftwood Uptop Crips have grown as a gang. They now have sparked new beefs with gangs like the Connection Bloods, the Lanes Crew, Ardwick Bloods, Chalk Farm Bloods, Jungle City Goons, 5 Point Generals, and continue the decade-long feud with the Rexdale Crips. The community is now composed of not only just a majority of Caribbeans, but a bunch of other ethnicities as well. The crime in the area over the years quickly caught the focus of the police, and in the mid-2000s, they began to launch an investigation into the gang. This investigation was going on for 11 months when it suddenly escalated after a 15-year-old boy, Jordan Manners, was shot to death inside a school in the Jane and Finch area, C.W. Jeffries, in May of 2007. This enforced the issue of youth violence in the neighborhood, specifically Driftwood and the Crips gang, and so the police wanted to crack down on the gang fast. In June of 2007, just 1 month after Jordan Manners' death, police launched Project Cryptic. Over 700 members of law enforcement orchestrated a series of raids and search warrants on over 130 vehicles and residences, mainly in Driftwood, but also in some other locations that were associated with the gang. In total, 95 alleged members were arrested, 69 men, 21 women, and 5 young offenders. More than 700 charges were laid to the group, and the police seized drugs valued over $1 million, over 35 guns, and $220,000 in cold hard cash. Ironically, One of those among the arrested is Jordan Manor's older sister, Nicole Small, but that wasn't the only rare find during the raid. The police also apprehend what they believe to be the three leaders of the Driftwood Crips at the time, what they dubbed the Three Generals. The generals consisted of three brothers, Michael Johnson, 30, Peter Johnson, 24, and Natal Johnson, 23. The oldest, Michael, was known to be a top supplier of cocaine in Driftwood. Although police claim he ran the Driftwood Crips, he himself didn't live there. He lived at Bathurst and Steeles, methodically staying in the shadows. Before being arrested, the youngest brother, Natal, is said to have been trying to ally with the Jamestown Crips, which are a subset in Rexdale, and end the drawn-out beef. There's nothing to show that this attempt was successful. One of the craziest parts of the investigation is that 6 of the people arrested during the raids actually worked at the Toronto Pearson International Airport. Police say that these employees worked in the cargo and ramp area, and that they were involved in the importation of drugs into the country. It just shows you how intricate this gang really was, and what kind of connections they have. The police charged the members with heavy offenses, aiming for long sentences, and, in essence, to fully dismantle the gang. Having nabbed not only the top 3 players in the gang, but incarcerating 95 other members, left the police feeling like a mission was accomplished, at least for a while. Bill Blair, who was the chief of Toronto Police at the time, flaunted the fact that he had the members and the gang's leadership in custody, and boasted that the city had one less street gang to worry about. Now we get into the 2010s, and there's a whole new generation of cliques and members representing the gang. Despite the large raid that the police pulled in 2007, the Driftwood Crips are still flourishing more than ever. The introduction of platforms like YouTube allowed a bunch of rappers to emerge from the area. Some of the big names out of Driftwood are Pressa, Burnabands, Houdini, talluptwinz, robinbanks, and much more. Rappers from rival gangs also emerged, which brought problems. Gangs can now threaten their rivals with music videos, mock them, diss them, whatever the case may be. This only escalated beef faster, and even became a way for new problems between gangs to form. A rapper just has to say one wrong thing and it's on. Some of the people who were jailed from the 2007 raid were out by this time already. The gang is fully functioning. The drug enterprise is running, and they're still at war with a number of different sets, and have gained more enemies since the mid-2000s. The Uptop Crips are still divided into smaller groups, with cliques like wassgang and neatgang, using music to create a buzz. This younger, new generation proves to be just as violent and ruthless as the past one. They were responsible for a high number of shootings and homicides within the city, with a Driftwood rapper who goes by 21neat being charged with the murder of a popular Regent Park rapper, Smoke Dog. It was a broad day shooting, proving that the gang has no boundaries or limitations when they want you dead. The Driftwood Crips seem to have a lot of issues and problems with different sets, making it seem like the gang just genuinely enjoys violence and beef. These are the type of gangs that are just highly dangerous. They shoot first and ask questions later. The Driftwood Crips gang are national, having a presence across the country in British Columbia, trafficking drugs in cities like Vancouver, Surrey, and towns in the surrounding area. 3 16-year-old boys from Driftwood were caught in Kelowna, a town a little bit east of Surrey, with fentanyl, cocaine, 2 loaded handguns, and over $30,000 in cash. They have ties with gangs in BC, like the Brothers Keeper gang, and work together to move drugs across Canada. So you're looking at a gang that is ambitious and looking to spread out and even collaborate with other gangs. The Driftwood Crips never left the police radar. Law enforcement wanted to take another crack at the gang, especially with the rise of fentanyl in the city. So they began another year-long investigation and prepared a new set of raids, to be dubbed Project Chronic this time. In June of 2007, police executed the project, conducting raids all over GTA Toronto, but aimed specifically at Driftwood Crips. This time, over 800 officers from 20 police forces joined together for the project. The aftermath of the raid was over 120 people arrested and 660 charges laid, including heavy crimes such as attempted murder, trafficking firearms, kidnapping, and robberies. Unsurprisingly, 19 of those arrested were actually arrested in the raids a decade before, but remained active in the gang. The seizures included 193 fentanyl patches and over 190 fentanyl pills. Over 14 handguns and a few shotguns were seized, with hundreds of rounds of ammo, and over 170 grand in cash. From the investigation, they also learned that the scope of the Driftwood Crips was larger than they thought, discovering they had members operating in Sudbury, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and they worked with many high-level gangs like Hell's Angels MC. This recent project was another vile attempt by police to break down the foundation of the Driftwood Crips. On the surface, it seems like the project was successful, but it seems like just a small hit for the gang. In conclusion, this is a gang in an area that's been prominent in Toronto for decades. The crime rate in the area either goes up or goes down, but it never stops. With the introduction of social media and platforms that members and rappers can post content, the beast that is a gang war will continue to be fed. Driftwood's latest rapper to pass away was Houdini, which just happened a few weeks ago, reminding us that the violence surrounding the gang continues to this day. If you made it this far, I appreciate you, and hit the like button if you enjoyed the video.